who were asleep, who thought we'd made it, that everything was fine. As a result of what Donald Trump is doing, people find themselves having to respond. And I love what the sister said earlier. Not everybody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And what we need to do is get our folks to do their something, whatever that something is. So I'm really encouraged. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the program. But more importantly, for people who are listening and people who want to be involved and people who want to do something, I'd like to give the Caucus of African American Leaders telephone number. And people listening and who want to figure out what it is that they can do, I invite them to give us a call, and we will direct them. Here in Annapolis, as you know, we were able to mobilize and energize people around the book ban that was going to take place at the United States Naval Academy. People showed up in great numbers. I think people are just waiting for leadership. And lastly, Daryl, one of the things I would really want to emphasize, which was said earlier by the professor, where's the black outrage? Where's our leadership? Where are our folks standing tall and speaking strongly? The fact of the matter is this attack on our history should have every major African-American leader, particularly elected officials, out on the front lines. And quite candidly, we need to hear from them. They need to provide some leadership. And we need to demand of our leadership that they respond.
Well, Carl, do you believe that some of the responses come from Senator Cory Booker and some of the others that they did the sit-in on the steps, and you had Senator Booker that also did the 25-hour talk or holding up legislation, holding up the Senate? Is that some of the response that you're making reference to?
Here's what I'm making reference to. Daryl, you and I later next month is going to be honoring the late Perrin J. Mitchell. Here's what Perrin Mitchell would do under a similar situation 40 years ago that would be applicable today. If Perrin Mitchell was alive today and saw the kind of injustices that's being put upon his people, the first thing he would do is hold town hall meetings in his congressional district, give people instructions how to respond. That's not happening across the country. There should be simultaneously 60 members of the Legislative Black Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus, simultaneously should be holding meetings and telling people what they can do. And again, there are a number of things that people can do and should do. So I'm convinced that the action that needs to be done has to come from the bottom up. Our leadership, when they're not responding in the way they should be responding, requires those of us in the community to not only hold them accountable, but to provide an alternative. And we're seeing that. And I think you're going to see that play out in many, many ways. But it's important for us our voices to be heard and for us to take a stance.
And, Carl, you mentioned earlier the Caucus of African American Leaders telephone number. You want to give that to everyone right now?
Barbara, thank you very much. It's 443-871-5656. 443-871-5656. And I would just ask people to just take this moment to Google Emmett Till Security Alert. Emmett Till Security Alert. And they'll see what I'm talking about, the need for people at the grassroots level to respond to the threats that we're faced with.
Kim and Daryl and Carl, our people, we've always had a drumbeat.
Yes.
Our drums have called us home. Our drums have alerted us to danger. Our drums have alerted us to the time to flee, the time to fight. Our drums, and I think what you're talking about when you talk about the black leadership not being present is that there should be a drumbeat. It should be so pervasive that you hear it. Every time you turn on TV, there's a black leader saying something. Every time, and if the TV stations don't want to do what they need to do, then they be on the radio, out in the streets, out in the churches, holding meetings. I mean, what's missing is the drumbeat. We need that drumbeat, people, not just once in a while, some kind of appearance. We're talking about constant agitation. Remember Frederick Douglass said what? Agitate, agitate, agitate. The last word he spoke in his life. We need that's what's missing. I mean, I'm not just talking about folks, meeting with Target and all the rest of them. Yes, we got to boycott them, no doubt about it. But we got to boycott them towards a purpose, not just people meeting and knowing CEOs and the rest of it. This is about us making sure that our people have jobs, that they are in leadership, that they have procurement opportunities, that they're able to sell their wares and be creative and make money and build fortunes. All of that is important. And it's not about, just one leader. It's not about these egos. I mean, we're dealing with a mega ego maniac in the White House right now. We don't need more of that. It's not about. We got to have the drum beat, the drum beat, the drum beat. Right, Daryl?
Oh, absolutely, Barbara. And Professor Crenshaw, one of the things that we recently had an opportunity to hear Jesse Jackson Jr. Speak, and one of the things that the former congressman said that I thought was just so pervasive and so insightful was that, we need leaders that when they get to Congress, they're less concerned with the cigars and the prestige and more concerned with the policy and the progress of the people. Is part of what you're trying to pull out with this freedom to learn week, the concept of learning that history, of understanding that, what folks need to latch on to. Are those positive things of policy and progress rather than being these mini celebrities with power?
Yes. Well, we can't see each other, but you would know that from everything that I heard from Attorney Snowden to what Barbara just said and what you just said, Daryl, absolutely 100%. Look, this is a crisis that did not have to come to this moment. For 5 years, AAPF has been trying to raise the critical question about how the erasure of our history, of our ideas, of our concepts was just a precursor to a more fundamental attack on the entire infrastructure that our people created, the entire infrastructure of civil rights. And I tell you who was missing in action in that. It was, I'm be honest, it was the people to whom we give our votes. We could not get the White House. We could not get leaders in the CBC to actually understand that the attack on 1619, the attack on critical race theory, the attack on notions like structural racism, these weren't just ideas. These weren't just minor skirmishes. They were going after the core of why it is and how it is that we still have inequality in this society. But we couldn't get people to take it up. Some folks were saying, well, education is not an issue that the federal government and Congress has any control over. Tell that to the MAGA folks who are trying to take over public education everywhere. So we weren't showing up for the fight. And now we're at a moment where we're kind of rusty. We don't really know how to go about talking about these issues. But I tell you one thing, the MAGA folks know how to go about talking about it. They know what this issue is. If you remember nothing else, remember this. When the Navy went to the library to purge their books and take out the things that they were considered to be improper, what they took out were things like the history of the Ku Klux Klan, the history of lynching. They took out racist speech, the fighting racist speech. They took out, I know why the caged bird sings. What did they leave? Get ready for this. They left Hitler's Mein Kampf. They left Charles Murray's The Bell Curve, which is a tribute to eugenicism, the notion that we are not all created equal. And if we're not all created equal, then inequality is not a social problem. In fact, even talking about racial inequality is the social problem, according to the MAGA right. So now the cat is out of the bag. They're all about reinforcing the hierarchy and taking away our tools to name it. And if you can't name it, you can't transform it. That is the point. That is the game. That's what they're up to. So if they're clear about their mission and the message behind their mission, then we can't afford to be sitting here on our hands, not pulling out every stop we have to defend our lives, to defend our history, defend our museums, and to defend our future.
And that's why we here at PJC and at Igniting Change today want to give our Heroes of the Week award to the caucus of African American leaders for the major demonstration and protest that they led at the U.S. Naval Academy about the banning of these 400 books, the tossing of them into the trash can, people, major works by Maya Angelou and others, in the trash can. That's what they think about our history. And it is so important. We want to really thank Carl Snowden for his leadership. Daryl Jones, you were out there on that front line speaking also, and you were surrounded by people and others who had come to be there, and other speakers and other leaders and people who just cared. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for standing up. Thank you, caucus. We want to see that everywhere around the country, wherever you hear about a book banning taking place, wherever you hear about a meeting at the school boards to try to ban books or to try to ban the teaching of Black history or to try anti-DEI measures. When you hear about them, show up and say something. Don't be silent. Organize opposition. We would never be where we are if we didn't have that. So congratulations, Carl. Thank you for everything that you've done, to build Black history, because what we didn't talk about is that prior to this attack, groups like yours have been building all kinds of memorials so that people know our history, right? You got a new memorial coming up in Annapolis soon. Tell us about it.
It's going to be the Pern J. Mitchell Memorial.
Before you go to that memorial, Carl, I wanted you to add on to what Barbara has laid out with regards to the U.S. Naval Academy, because people need to hear that, the demonstration wasn't a one-off. It wasn't just that we showed up and we did the demonstration against the banned books. But as a result of that, Carl, you want to share with folks, as a result of that, what the bookstore decided to do? A local bookstore?
Yes, I'm glad you said that. The bookstore is put on a GoFundMe drive for the purposes of purchasing those books to ensure that those books are put into communities and neighborhoods and churches and mosques and temples so that people know that history. And Daryl, one of the things that I really think that needs to be underscored is what was said earlier today. I don't think people realize the power that they have. Just showing up. For those of you in the field of law, you know why there's an anti-loitering law. For people who've read The Color of Law, they understand that African Americans and our impact on this society has even created some of the laws that we have. It used to be a crime in this country if you saw 3 or 4 Black people on the corner together, because there was this fear that they were conspiring to do something. What I'm hopeful of is that as we move to deal with reminding people who Pern J. Mitchell was, who was the first African-American from Maryland to get elected to the Congress, that we also remember what Pern Mitchell said over and over and over again, often doing it in his 60-second poem, where he talked about time. And time is not our ally. We have to understand that. If we do not take the necessary steps today, not tomorrow, but today, we could lose ultimately the progress that we've made, the successes we've made. And lastly, one of the things I'd like to say to people listening, again, please take the time to Google Emmett Till Security Alert. Emmett Till Security Alert. We have to, Barbara said this earlier in another context, who's beating the drums? Who's telling us what to be aware of? What dangers exist? We have to have a mechanism to speak to our people so that the word can get out. We have had, and I end on this note, we had one of the greatest communication systems ever known to man. And most people don't realize this.
Yes.
Before there was television, before there was radio, before there were newspapers, there was a process that African Americans who were involved in the numbers game, if you needed to know what the number was, you didn't go to television to find that out. You couldn't find that out by going to a radio